Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome back to another Walking Dead video. So I wanted to talk about a lot of stuff actually for episode 3, but there's a lot of things that I want to talk about here. I have a bunch of topics that I do want to discuss regarding the Walking Dead universe, and so obviously I will focus primarily on episode 3, but there's a lot of stuff in here. Just a lot of like updates in terms of like the Walking Dead universe that I don't want to do a bunch of videos for because episode 3 is airing tomorrow, and I missed a lot of days this week that I probably could have did videos on these things separately, but yeah, I'm not going to have time to do all of that obviously because episode 3 is going to air tomorrow, and then there's going to be a bunch more stuff to talk about over the next week. So yeah, obviously, like I always say in every video, if you do want more Walking Dead content like this, then definitely make sure to be a subscriber. I will also be live on Twitch tomorrow, and I will be reacting to episode 3, so if you want to see my reaction, then definitely go follow me on Twitch. The channel name is Appetite for the Dead. The link will be in the description of this video. But episode 3. So this episode is airing tomorrow, and the episode is titled Bye. It's actually kind of funny. I was thinking about it. I'm like, why would it be called Bye? And I was thinking about it, like, it probably means that they leave the CRM. I really think that it's probably that simple, right? Like, the very first episode was titled Years, which I feel like isn't really, I mean, I don't really know how that relates to it. Obviously, I feel like, I don't know, it is kind of funny, but I do look at the titles Years Gone By for the first 3 episodes and think that it is a little silly. I would probably prefer the very first episode to be called Years Gone By, because that would make that episode so like iconic, right? And when I do look at both episodes, episodes 1 and 2, which one do I prefer more? Now that I'm thinking about it more, I do prefer episode 1 more, only because of the story of it. It was the first time we watched The Ones Who Live. It was the first time seeing Rick back after so many years, you know, and it was just such an iconic like episode where it really felt like its own story, right? And it ended in such a crazy way as well. So to me, it reminded me of the pilot in so many ways. Like, you know, in the pilot, it's Rick's story pretty much the whole time until the very ending where it sort of ends on a cliffhanger for the next episode, right? It's kind of the same thing. It's such a great episode. It's such a great start to everything that I think that it really should have just been called Years Gone By. I think calling the 3 episodes Years Gone By in that way just doesn't work. It just doesn't make a lot of sense, you know, like episode 3 being called Bye. I guess it makes sense if they leave, but I don't know. I think you could have called it something else. I really think you could have called these episodes other things, because now episode 4 and 5, it's called like What We, and then episode 5 is called Become. Obviously a reference to Michonne's final episode, right? Which is titled What We Become. I don't know. I think you could have changed it a little bit for episode 4 and maybe had that title just for episode 4. Obviously, you're not going to call episode 4 What We Become, but maybe you could have called it something else. Just, I don't know, something else that could have been a reference to it. You know, I now that I'm looking back at it, I'm not really a fan of the titles. I think it's a little silly, you know, just the way that they structured it. But still, you know, episode 3, I'm definitely really looking forward to this episode because this is the first episode where we're actually going to see our characters, you know, do things and actually, you know, it's not like backstory stuff. It's basically what we've been getting for the last however long, right? It's just been, like, I'm not saying it wasn't fun getting all that, obviously, but it was so exciting to see at the end of episode 2, Jada say what she said, because it was like, okay, now we're in the story. Because, like, we've been talking about this for so long. Like, we've been talking about this story for so long now that it really, seeing, like, just, you know, the show right now, it's not like it's that surprising. Like, I already expected Jadis and the CRM to sort of tell Rick that if he leaves, then, you know, something bad's going to happen to Alexandria. So, you know, getting all this stuff out of the way, you know, finally setting all this stuff up where we can just see it all. Then it's like, okay, now we're there. Now where does the story go, right? So that's why I feel like the first 2 episodes, really great episodes, but like it really just set all of this stuff up. Now we have Rick and Michonne together. They're at the CRM. Now what's going to happen, right? And so now we're sort of in the place where everything is just set up, and it's so exciting to be able to focus on the story going forward. What happens with Pearl Thorne? You know, what does Jadis do? Does Rick, you know, actually save Michonne in the very final moments of this episode? Do they actually get away? You know, I have a lot of questions about all that. I will say, looking back at episodes 1 and 2, or not really episode 1, it really is just Michonne's story. Michonne's story feels like it kind of went to waste a little bit, just like her backstory over the last couple of years. Rick's, you can't really argue that it did because it's still playing a role, right? Like, you have Pearl Thorne there and all that, and in Rick's episode, the first one, I mean, everyone that was there besides Okafor is still around, right? But Okafor, like, he was more set up for what the story's going to be, and that's a little different, right? Whereas with Michonne, she was with a group at the very end of her last episode, and you kind of saw some stuff in the final episode of The Walking Dead, but it's just very, very interesting to see Michonne now in a place where that group is completely gone. I mean, they pretty much wrote that group off. Like, that group leaves people behind. Like, I don't know. I'm disappointed in Nat. And then the group that she was with, like Nat, and then you have Bailey and Aiden, like, they're all dead. Like, all of them were gone. And I knew that some of the characters were going to go, but having one character, like having Nat, I think would have been really cool, to just keep him around the story for a little bit longer. But it's just so weird to think that Michonne's journey over those however many years was told within 20 to 30 minutes. It was so fast. And I get it, for them, they're probably thinking, well, it's not that important to the story. Like, we want Rick and Michonne to be together. That's the part that people are wanting to watch, right? So we don't want to have to go into a whole thing explaining all of that, showing that like for episodes and episodes. And I do kind of get that. Like, I do understand the structure of it a little bit. And so I really do hope that in episode 3, they do slow things down a lot more. I know they said that they are going to be doing that. Like, episode 3 and 4 really slow stuff down a bit. Like, it's more focused in like the current story kind of thing. And at least after episode 4, you really feel like, all right, here we go. Like, now we're finally here. Like, everything is kind of set up. Which, again, I still find very off. Like, after 4 episodes into a 6-episode season, you finally feel like everything is set up. Like, that to me means that how are you going to end it in 2 more episodes? Episode 3, that's why I'm excited for it, because I think that it's actually going to be just like a normal episode where you have Rick and Michonne in the same place. There's not a lot of jumping around in timeline and all that. And I will say that's one thing that I am worried about for episode 3, which I don't think they're going to do. But I really hope that is just completely avoided now for the rest of this season. Do not do any more time jumps. I don't even want a time jump of a week or like a month. Just stay in the current story. Just stay there. Don't go forward or anything. Just stay like right there. Like, don't go further anymore. Because episode 1, I get it. You had to have done that. Episode 2, I also get it. Like, you did have to do that. But when you do that, you don't have time to settle with the characters. So I just want them to focus on just like now and just like what the story is right now, and not jump forward a month. Like, that's kind of my worry. What if they jump forward in this episode like 2 or 3 months and Michonne is still killing walkers or something like that? Like, to me, I'm like, I don't want to see that. Like, just have Michonne doing that, and then just, you don't have to do that. You don't have to be like, yeah, she's been doing that for 2 or 3 months. It's like, I don't know. It just sort of, it disconnects you from the story, right? So I'm hoping that for episode 3, that is not going to be the case, and that they just, they really focus on, like, it seems like the main story for episode 3 here is Michonne is in trouble, Rick needs to save her, and is he going to be successful in that? Obviously is going to be, but like, how does Jadis play a role into that? She threatened him with a bunch of stuff. There's Pearl Thorne, and just what is the whole thing going to be here for the story? And yeah, again, I'm very fascinated in where they're going to be going here. But I do also want to mention one thing very, very quick here, and that is the ratings for episode 2. So the ratings dropped like a very, very small amount. I think it was like 0.896 in terms of cable viewers or whatever. For episode 2, it was 0.88 something. I don't know what the last number was, but basically it dropped by like 10 to 15,000 or something like that. So to me, that's kind of like you're maintaining it, right? Like, that's kind of a really cool thing to see, that the premiere is really big and then people tuned in for episode 2, right? Like, that's really awesome. And again, people are always going to tune in for premieres because it's like the big event. So people are just going to more watch that episode than episode 2, where they'll just check out later on, right? Like, I know so many people that have watched episode 1, but didn't watch episode 2 on the Sunday or even the couple days after. Like, they just literally just watched it in the last couple of days. They're like, oh, that's right, it's on still, right? So that's kind of normal. So the fact that it actually maintained like that is really, really cool. And I also wanted to talk about something that I saw online, which is that Daryl Dixon and Dead City were nominated for a bunch of stuff. And very, very cool to obviously see the show get nominated for a bunch of stuff. But yeah, I see that apparently The Walking Dead Dead City has been nominated for Best Superhero Series, which I found very, very surprising. Now, I've been looking at this, so I saw this here from @TWalkingDWorld on Twitter. It could have been the way that it was worded, but it does say like Superhero Series, Limited Series, or Made for TV Movie at the 2024 Critics' Choice Super Awards. So I guess that's probably like this. I don't know. To me, it's weird because Dead City, it's not a limited series. Like, they didn't announce it as a limited series. If they did announce it as a limited series and it got a season 2, then to me, I'm like, well, is that more confirmation that The Ones Who Live could get a season 2 then, right? Like, so I'm kind of confused as to what Dead City falls under. Does it fall under a limited series because it wasn't announced as that? Unless maybe that's sort of how AMC viewed it, but it's just getting multiple seasons. So that, that raises the argument for The Ones Who Live. Like, they're saying it's a limited series, though they are backing off a lot on that now. Are they doing that more for just all of the awards? And that's something that people have been talking about, is like, they're more just saying this for like the awards and stuff so that it could get nominated for like Emmys and all of that, right? So I'm interested in that. We'll have to wait and see, obviously, but Dead City being nominated for this is very, very cool. I mean, I don't really, like, for me, I don't really care too much anyways about like nominations and all of that, but still I wanted to mention it here. And I also wanted to talk about something that it's been very, very interesting. So Glenn's death, obviously, in the show was something that people really, obviously, it changed a lot, right? Like, people stopped watching The Walking Dead. And my thoughts on it since that moment really happened was that I think people were just being too dramatic about it, right? Like, it's just like, I've watched, horror films my entire life, slashers and everything, and there are definitely worse scenes than that. Like, there's crazier things that happen, right? But I was watching it the other day, and the reason why I was looking into it is because I'm actually right now creating my own Lucille and stuff like that. So I was just like kind of looking into the bat and stuff, and yeah, I started watching the scenes or whatever, and then I saw Glenn's death, and I was really like, I was thinking about it in terms of, just how the scene plays out. It's honestly really insane. And I think what it is that The Walking Dead, like, there's something about the show and its characters, right? And I think what that moment was it was just seeing Glenn in that moment. Like, see, I really want to do a video breaking down that, that cliffhanger and stuff, and especially like Glenn's death and why it was so bad, because it really is like, I feel like I'm only really understanding it now, like for since the moment happened, I've really honestly, I've been totally fine with it. Like, I've been more upset about Abraham's death, but I don't know if it was too gruesome. I think that it was supposed to be shocking like that, but I get it. I do kind of get if people really liked Glenn, it was just seeing the character like that, it was definitely something that I can see people being like, especially if you don't like horror films or like slashers and all of that stuff is too much for you. Watching The Walking Dead, it's never really went there. So it just being that connected with the character, and then all of a sudden The Walking Dead just goes into that place where it's like a slasher film, basically, right? Like, it's something that's just so insane, and people who haven't really watched slashers and all of that, seeing that after just being so connected with Glenn and really loving that character, like, I can see why people were like, yeah, you know what, I'm not gonna watch anymore, right? Because it honestly was really insane. And I think the thing is too is people didn't tune out immediately. Like, the ratings were already declining. Like, that wasn't the moment where ratings dropped. Ratings were already dropping from what I remember. And that's just kind of a normal thing, right? Like, ratings picked up like in a crazy amount before that, but they were sort of dropping. And I really feel like this was a response to that, because they wanted to maintain those high numbers, which is like, you can never do that. Like, no show can do that. Like, a show will sort of hit a peak and then drop off, and then it'll never return to that, because it's just impossible, right? But they were trying to do that, and I think that's why they did the cliffhanger. But I feel like if they did Glenn's death in the same exact way, and it happened in the very final episode still, it would give people the summer to process all of it. And then when you watch the season 7 finale, maybe it takes place with Rick just sort of being destroyed, and, they all go back to Alexandria or whatever, but Negan's already gone, right? This way you're starting off the season in a better place. It's not so dark and all of that, right? Whereas the way they set it up, it was like the first episode, it was so dark and everything, and then the rest of the season just became so hard to watch, right? So I think that was probably the best way you could have done it, like ended, season 6 in a really insane way with Glenn's death, and then left our characters broken, and that was it. The show's over. You paid off a really incredible story for season 6. That would make season 6 my favorite season of all time immediately. And then season 7 is just a start of a new thing, right? But they wanted those ratings, and again, that's what Gimple's, that's what he likes doing. And sometimes he's really good at it. Sometimes you get a reaction like that. And that's cliffhangers, right? Like, you have to know when to use them. You have to use them in a really, really smart way, because otherwise it can really upset your audience. And I think in that moment, it really, really did. People were so upset about it. And yeah, so that's why in The Ones Who Live, that's why when I look at this show, I'm like, hey, every episode has ended in a cliffhanger. I've heard the same thing about other episodes. And so, with how open they are about doing a season 2, I'm just like, that's why I'm kind of like, is this going to end in a cliffhanger? Like, I feel like there's no way this is going to end in a way where it's so conclusive and like, this is it. Like, yes, for Rick and Michonne's story, for their reunion story, I feel like it's going to be more conclusive. Like, they're back together. this and that, and it is whatever, right? There's going to be a story there that is told that is like, okay, that's really amazing, but there's no way the story is going to end just like that. I feel like it's going to end in a way where, I don't know, a season 2 is set up. Again, maybe it's something that we're not even thinking about. Maybe like they actually do reunite with Judith and RJ. Maybe if they were to do a season 2, then it's all of them together, right? Because we're always assuming that they're going to reunite with Judith and RJ at the very end of everything in like an endgame show. What if they reunite with Judith and RJ in the last episode here? But there's like an ending here where there's something with, you know, Major General Beale and all of that. And there's sort of a, because I don't know, I keep thinking about what Andrew Lincoln said. Like he was asked like whether or not this was a chapter to a story or like, you know, the end of whatever. And he just kind of said, I like to think of it as both, basically, like this is a chapter in something, but it could also stand on its own. Like I'm paraphrasing here, but it's basically like, I would like to think that this could be a chapter of something, or it could also just be there on its own, but with like a ... afterwards or something like that. So that part there, I'm like, it's just that part. It really is that part there. Like Andrew Lincoln saying that specifically about the ... afterwards. Like to me, I think this story is going to end in a way where we're like, oh, that's really cool, but then there's going to be a cliffhanger. And it's because Scott Gimple is the showrunner. And so I just, again, I could be wrong, but I just have this feeling. And yeah, but anyways, I'll leave it here. In this video here, I really wanted to talk about a bunch of random stuff because there's a lot of things I've just been thinking about for the last however long, and I'm like, I want to do this and do that, and I just kind of wanted to get into a bunch of stuff here. And so yeah, but definitely post all your thoughts down below. Hope you guys all enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.